Welcome back to Inside Story. Japan's Emperor Akihito recently visited the United Kingdom. The event, though, sparked protests by World War II veterans and former prisoners of war. It's testament that war wounds are difficult to heal, and for these battle-hardened veterans, their experiences in the Far East are still vivid and indelible more than 50 years on. Well, Inside Story now looks at how one former POW, Donald Hill, kept his wartime experiences in Hong Kong secret with the help of a coded diary. It's finally been deciphered, revealing despair in battle and internment, an experience even his family didn't know about until recently. We now tell you why Hill's story truly comes full circle, more than half a century later. This is Christopher Hill's first visit to the British military cemetery in Stanley.
Flight Lieutenant Gray, mentioned in my father's diary. I assume he's the same man from the Royal Air Force, 18th of December, 43. Colonel knew him. Sounds very familiar. Seeing this place brings it all alive again in a way, because all the names were mentioned in the diary, and then to actually see the gravestones here with their names and the date they died and their age, it sort of brings it all alive, really.
For the 45-year-old, the visit here is a special one. Hill's father, Donald, survived the war.
He wasn't interested in boring people with parts of his life that they knew nothing about. But I only wish I'd found this place before he died, really. And I would have brought him here. And he would have remembered these people, for sure. And he could have told a completely different story.
One story Donald Hill didn't want anyone to know about was his own.
He didn't have a passion to come back here. I think he was too traumatized by it. I think they all were. I think anybody who spent 4 years in a camp not knowing whether you were going to live to see another day would be very traumatized, and I think that's why he stayed away. My father never really took any interest in the diary, so as children we just assumed that it wasn't interesting. And it was only after he died that my mother became very interested in seeing what little secrets that were hidden away in the diary.
Donald Hill was an accountant turned aviator, and it was in 1939 that the young RAF squadron leader found himself flying in the Far East.
He first started in Singapore, and then when they realized that Hong Kong was very short of personnel and men and equipment and troops generally, he was posted here. And he was here for 3 or 4 months before Japan invaded.
And when it did, this is how it was captured in Hill's flight logbook.
War with Japan. Aircraft destroyed by enemy fighters.
17 days after that entry, on Christmas Day, defending forces surrendered. Hill and thousands of others became Japanese prisoners of war, interned in camps in which many died. For 3 months, Hill chronicled his time in battle and captivity. And he made sure his thoughts were kept secret by keeping them in code, in a diary disguised as Russell's mathematical tables. Hill never translated it. He died in 1985. He left a diary that became a mystery his family was determined to solve.
The attempt to decode it had been done before by the Imperial War Museum with very limited success. They didn't actually believe it was a diary. They just thought it was a jumble of numbers. But Dr. Philip Aston at the University of Surrey was convinced it was a diary just by the way it was laid out.
After wrestling with the puzzle for 6 months, Dr. Aston realized the key to the mystery rested in the number 34, the total number of letters in Donald Hill's full name and that of his fiancée, Pamela Kearidge.
Well, I don't think what he realized was it was so well disguised. My father used 3 different methods of disguising the diary to avoid it being exposed by the Japanese, who would have executed him had they found it.
Late last year, the code was deciphered, and this is how Donald Hill begins his journal.
Much talk about war with Japan, but no one seems to think anything will happen. Over breakfast, we are told that we are at war with Japan. We dash down to flights just in time to hear an ominous roar of planes and 9 bombers escorted by over 30 fighters appear heading our way.
Really, that's how the diary starts. The initial invasion of the Japanese Air Force, destroying basically Kai Tak and the few aircraft they had. It was just the hand-to-hand fighting, which was really the most traumatic part of the diary. And the appalling conditions. It was cold, it was raining a lot, and they were very scared, very frightened.
Everyone soaked through and half dead by the morning, as we had no protection against the weather. Spend half the night pouring rum into semi-conscious men who are dead tired after sleepless nights with very little food. We have no reserves, and everyone has had a grueling time. A Canadian sergeant from Campbell's party returns to our pillbox at midnight in a state of mental and physical collapse and reports that all his party have been killed. A few hours later, another Canadian arrives in a similar condition and with the same story. Worst night I can ever remember, and never was the dawn more welcome. What a Christmas day. Empty stomachs, tired out, and heaven knows what's going on. At 10 a.m. a message arrives saying there is a truce until midday. The news is immediately followed by a terrific bombardment of our positions. Not my idea of a truce.
The journal also reveals unexpected moments of admiration for Hill, who found himself temporarily being a chauffeur for the Japanese the very next day.
We had passed hundreds of troops, and the streets were littered with dead Chinese. I was beginning to think my work was done when several officers started arguing and kept pointing at me, looking aggressive. Suddenly, one of the officers whipped out his sword, and I thought they decided to bump me off. But to my amazement, he produced a bottle of beer, nipped the top off with his sword, and handed me the bottle. I was then given a loaf of bread. Apart from 1 or 2 soldiers, they treated me very well. My wings seemed to fascinate them.
Those moments proved to be few and far between, as stories of atrocities grew by the day.
More troops arrive from Stanley and report that Japs raped and bayoneted nurses in St. Stephen's Hospital and also killed the wounded. Colonel Smith, whose wife was one of those killed, goes nearly mad and tries to get at the nearest Jap. Several atrocity stories come to light, and the atmosphere becomes very tense.
There are 1 or 2 parts in the diary that are very moving. You feel that he's trying to chronicle what went on, but from time to time you can see he gets emotionally carried away.
At dawn, we prepare to move off. We're determined to bear our humiliation without a murmur. Our day will surely come. We form into units and after 2 hours waiting, move off, over 6,000 strong. Arrive at the ferry, and after a long wait, we are ferried across to Kowloon, where we form into units again. Off again, but where? No one knows. After a mile or so, we come back to Natham Road. By this time, we begin to feel the strain and have to rest frequently. Each unit has its own guard. Thousands of Chinese line the streets, a few jeering, but mostly quiet, and some are in tears. It would appear we're going to Sham Shui Po, several miles away.
And what met the POWs? Squalid conditions that bred disease and death.
There are over 6,000 men in the camp with no sanitation and rotten food. We have no lights and have to go to bed soon after dusk. We have one meal at 9 and another at 5, consisting of soggy rice, and we're permanently hungry. And so ended 1941.
He had a Chinese girlfriend called Flory, and I think a lot of the soldiers probably did have either Chinese wives or girlfriends. And the women showed extraordinary courage in smuggling parcels of food and clothing and blankets through the fences to the Allied POWs.
I am now the only RAF officer left. A sad day for me to lose such grand companions in distress, especially the wing. Someone brings me a parcel which Florrie had brought me. The Japs have started to allow a limited number through. A large tin of cocoa, tomatoes, milk, butter, soap and biscuits. How the others would have enjoyed it. I go down to the fence and see Florrie and have quite a long chat with her. She's been interned at Stanley for a fortnight.
He says she was executed by the Japanese much later on. As far as we know, she's not alive anymore, but I would love to know who that woman was and whether any of her family is still alive.
Hill kept humorous cocktail recipes and other things in the journal to try to break the monotony of camp life. A difficult life, secretly recorded but skillfully hidden from his fiancée in the handful of letters to her.
Spend hours these days thinking of home and family, especially Pam. They probably think I'm dead, and I pray to God the Japs will get the news through.
As a long-haul airline pilot, Hill is a frequent visitor, and since the diary was decoded, he's been on a mission to find out more about his father's wartime experiences here. Today, for the first time, he journeys to Sham Shui Po Park to pay homage to his father and others who suffered here, with the help of war veteran Jack Edwards.
This is a great honor, Jack.
My privilege to be here. I'm lucky, I'm a survivor. We're laying this poppy in remembrance of your father, Donald Hill, who served in the Royal Air Force, and through him, the great company of men we remember are within this camp with your father.
To know there's a memorial for all these men who died and fought so bravely is very special for me, and I shall come here again on many occasions to celebrate the memory of these men who were so brave.
He's important, he's the son. The veterans have seen it now, and we've been through it, but it's very, very important for people like Chris to come here.
Hong Kong's always been a special place for a pilot to come into, but now I know my father was here for so long, suffered so much during the 4 years, and the fact that he survived, and by virtue of that I'm here. Yes, I do feel very special about Hong Kong.
Is it a strange feeling knowing that POWs and perhaps even your father had some part in building the runway?
Well, yes, in some ways. It's such a long time ago now that it's hard to visualize it. But you only have to look at the terrain and feel the climate and the humidity here. And you can use your imagination a little bit. Basically, the way you see the runway today was the way it was built under the Japanese occupation by the prisoners of war here in Hong Kong, which makes it even sadder that it's closing, really.
Do you think you'll feel differently the next time you come into Hong Kong?
Yes, I think undoubtedly I will see it differently. I'll see it as a place that's ingrained on my life forever, and something I hope to pass on to my grandchildren. Part of our history, really.
Well, if you'd like to read the full text of the diary and find out how it was decoded, you can look up these websites on the net. Well, that wraps up the program. We hope you enjoyed it. From all of us here on Inside Story, join us at the same time next week. Until then, thanks for watching. Today, for the first time, he journeys to Sham Shui Po Park to pay homage to his father and others who suffered here, with the help of war veteran Jack Edwards.
This is a great honor, Jack.
My privilege to be here. I'm lucky, I'm a survivor. We're laying this poppy in remembrance of your father, Donald Hill, who served in the Royal Air Force, and through him, the great company of men we remember are within this camp with your father.
To know there's a memorial for all these men who died and fought so bravely is very special for me, and I shall come here again on many occasions to celebrate the memory of these men who were so brave.
He's important, he's the son. The veterans have seen it now, and we've been through it, but it's very, very important for people like Chris to come here.
Kong's always been a special place for a pilot to come into, but now I know my father was here for so long, suffered so much during the 4 years, and the fact that he survived, and by virtue of that I'm here, yes, I do feel very special about Hong Kong.
Isn't it a strange feeling knowing that POWs and perhaps even your father had some part in building the runway?
Well, yes, in some ways. It's such a long time ago now that it's hard to visualize it. But you only have to look at the terrain and feel the climate and the humidity here. And you can use your imagination a little bit. Basically, the way you see the runway today was the way it was built under the Japanese occupation by the prisoners of war here in Hong Kong, which makes it even sadder that it's closing, really.
Do you think you'll feel differently the next time you come into Hong Kong?
Yes, I think undoubtedly I will see it differently. I'll see it as a place that's ingrained on my life forever, and something I hope to pass on to my grandchildren. Part of our history, really.